Hello and welcome back to Beckler Guitars and Repair, and today we got a fun one. We're going to be comparing a $200 Les Paul clone type model to a $2,000 real deal Les Paul Jr. Let's go ahead. So I've already done full review and demos for each of these guitars, so if you're interested in that, the links will be in the description. This is not going to be a huge in-depth video. We're just going to compare these models, see how they play, see how they sound, and see what is the reason for the big difference in price. So this is a Westcreek double cut model that I purchased on Amazon a while back, and I was really impressed with it. If you watch the review, you can see a little bit more about that one. And this is a 2010 Les Paul Jr. in satin white. So these are both really nice guitars. I'm just going to go through and we're going to hear the difference. We can see the differences, small differences between them, and see where all that money is going. Alright, so this is the Westcreek double cut. I want to start off by saying that this is a pretty crazily spec'd out guitar for the money. I bought this for just over $200 on Amazon on a sale, and it's got crazy specs, like very similar to the Gibson. So let's go ahead and get started. So this is a mahogany body, a full mahogany body. It's got a mahogany neck. This one has a rosewood fingerboard. It's got the acrylic dot inlays, so not real mother of pearl, but acrylic. The neck is bound, so this one actually has binding. That's something that the Les Paul Jr. does not have. And the nut is bone. So on the Les Paul Jr. it is a Corian nut, so this is a bone nut. We've also got inlays on the headstock, so this is kind of fake mother of pearl inlay. It's definitely not real. And then we've got our tombstone style truss rod cover, and this one has a dual action truss rod, which is another difference between the two guitars. This one also has an adjustable bridge as the tailpiece. So this is kind of a stop bar tailpiece bridge. And this one has individual saddles that you can adjust for intonation. You can also adjust both screws back and forth, so you can really dial in your intonation on this bridge, which is something the Gibson does not have. And then our controls are pretty simple. So we've got a one volume, one tone control pots there. Very simple. And then this is our dog ear P90 pickup. We can see on the back that this is a set neck construction, just like a Gibson. And yeah, this is a shell pink. This is a gloss finish, so it's a little different than the Gibson. The Gibson's a satin finish. And this one is a poly finish, which is like a thicker, kind of a glossy finish, and on the Gibson it's a nitro satin finish, so it's just a very thin nitro finish on the Gibson. Another thing to note is the part differences. These are all going to be Chinese parts, but this one does have full-size pots on the inside, like full-size potentiometers, and the dog ear Pier 90 pickup is a Chinese model as well. And then the tuners are just very basic, low-end tuners. So that's definitely going to be different than the Gibson. I also just wanted to mention that this guitar came to me almost perfect. So what I mean by that is I didn't require anything else than just a very basic setup. All I had to do was lift this, pick up a little bit, and adjust the bridge a little bit. So it came to me with a really well-cut nut, perfect frets. I didn't have to do any fret work at all. The truss rod was adjusted correctly. So yeah, this guitar needed no extra work, hardly at all. And you'd expect that on a Gibson, but you would not expect that on a $200 guitar. So I just want to let everybody know that, because their experience might be different. I might have just got a unicorn here that didn't hardly need absolutely anything, and another guitar that someone else buys on Amazon might need a ton of work. So just wanted to put that out there. I got this guitar almost perfect, but your results may vary. And here is the Gibson. So we're just going to go over the specs. So this is a mahogany body, mahogany neck as well. So same as the Westcreek. You've got one volume, one tone. These are Gibson potentiometers. This one actually had the capacitor swapped out with the Russian style one. So like a paper in oil capacitor, a lot like a Bumblebee. So that's kind of an upgrade too. This one has a lightning bar stop piece or stop tail piece here. So this one is not as adjustable as the Westcreek. You can't do the individual saddles back and forth. The most you can do is kind of move the whole tailpiece back and forth to help with intonation. But this compensated saddles here, the lightning bar, is already made to keep good intonation. So this guitar in particular has very good intonation. That's not the case on all SG or Les Paul Juniors. Sometimes they're pretty bad at being intonated, but this one in particular is very good. But the Westcreek is nice to have that option to have a little bit more versatility when it comes to control when you're intonating. This also has a USA Gibson P90 pickup, so that's quite a bit of an upgrade over the Chinese one. However, we have to wait to hear the sound difference to really compare them. And this one has the satin finish, so this is a nitro finish, very thin satin. Some people say that this sort of finish kind of helps the guitar breathe better, more resonance, more sustain, not just choked out with thick poly, but I'm not sure if that holds any water or not. That's kind of a hot topic of debate when it comes to finishes. This one also has an ebony fingerboard. So most of these Les Paul Junior models have the rosewood, but this year with this finish, this one actually came with ebony. So this is a premium wood. So this one is a little nicer than the Westcreek. The Westcreek is just rosewood. However, rosewood's just as good as most people think. As far as tone goes, I don't believe there's any difference. The ebony just kind of feels a little bit smoother. It's kind of a denser wood, and it feels a lot like kind of like maple, whereas the rosewood's a little bit more porous. But that comes down to a personal preference thing. This one also has the acrylic dot inlays, and this one has a Corian nut, which is like a man-made bone type of substance. And this one just has the silk screening on the headstock. Most Les Paul Juniors have that. No inlay on the headstock. And then this also has the full-size capacitors. This one is routed in the back, so your controls are here, whereas on the Les Paul Junior, you have that cavity on the front. But yeah, these are full-size Gibson pots, Gibson wiring, along with that Russian capacitor. And this is set neck construction. And the tuners are USA as well, so these are Gibson Deluxe USA tuners. Alright, now I'm just going to get some measurements of both and we can kind of compare that. So neither of these guitars have weight relief. Full disclosure on that, like Westcreek, all the specs, I'm just announcing in this video what those specs are listed at the website. Again, sometimes these inexpensive guitars, they list inaccurate specs. So I'm just going off of the information that I have. But as far as I can tell, it's all correct. So the Les Paul Junior is weighing in at 7 pounds, 12.1 ounces. And the Westcreek's just a little bit lighter at 6 pounds, 14.9 ounces. So the Westcreek has their P90 pickup as an Alnico magnet pickup, and that one's reading at 8.12. And the USA Gibson P90 is reading a 7.69. Another thing I want to mention is not all Les Paul Juniors are going for $2,000 Canadian. This one that I have, this specific model, a 2010 Les Paul Junior in satin white, is going for around that $2,000 range. Of course, you're going to be able to find cheaper ones. This is just what I have, and this is what I'm comparing today. Another thing about the price is, you know, if you buy a Gibson Les Paul Junior, you can sell it for around that $2,000 mark. So let's say you have one of these, you played it for a couple of years, you can sell it for probably pretty close to what you paid for it. Whereas this one, you know, you bought it for $200, you're not going to be able to sell it for $200. It's not a well-known name. It's not going to hold value like a Gibson does. You might be able to sell this for, you know, $150, $100 after a few years, or maybe less. Again, that could change. Maybe Westcreek doesn't make these anymore and they're found out to be a rare gem and then the prices shoot up. But again, you know, the value of what these guitars are very different. This one is going to hold value and maybe even appreciate in value. And this one, as it stands right now, is not. So this is just a simple video showing, you know, the differences of the two guitars and what $200 can get you these days. So let's go ahead and compare some neck specs. So the width of the nut on the Les Paul Jr. is a 1.68, and on the Westcreek double cut, it's very close, 1.68. Width at the 12th fret for the Les Paul Jr. is a 2.06, and the width of the 12th for the Westcreek double cut is a 2.09. Sorry, a 2.10. All right, width at the first fret for the Les Paul Jr. is a 0.83, and for the Westcreek double cut, it is a beefier 0.945. At the 12th fret for the Les Paul Jr., it is a 0.88, and for the double cut, it's a 0.95. So this one definitely has a more 50s style neck, where this one's a little bit more of a 60s style. Here's the neck profile for the Gibson. It's a pretty standard C. It flattens a little bit out by the 12th fret. And the neck profile for the Westcreek's a little different. It starts off with kind of a really pointy C, almost like a U, and then it gets a little bit more flattened out to a normal C by the 12th fret. And feeling the necks, you can definitely tell that the Westcreek is a little chunkier and the Gibson is a little bit thinner. Both these guitars have the same scale length, which is a 24.75, and the same radius, which is 12. Another thing worth mentioning is that the Les Paul Jr. has a pretty perfect pickup height. You can't really adjust it, they just come mounted to the body. So the only way you can adjust your pickup height or how far they are away from the strings is your actual bridge, but then you're messing up with your setup. But this came just where it needed to be. This one was much too low on the Westcreek, so I had to go ahead and raise up the pickup so it was a little closer to the strings to get the same distance as the Les Paul Jr. So you can do that with pickup rings, or with, I just use a little bit of foam underneath the pickup to raise it up. Both these guitars are also set up exactly the same. I'm using the same strings on both of them, which is Ernie Ball 9s, Super Slinkies. And they both have the same amount of relief in the neck and the same setup for both, which is impressive for this inexpensive a guitar. I didn't have to do any fretwork on this or anything else, just a standard setup, and I was able to get it as nice of a setup on this cheaper guitar as this really expensive one. So again, your results may vary. I'm sure that's a big criticism of all these cheaper Amazon type guitars is their quality is very inconsistent. You know, 3 people might get a good one and 10 people might get a bad one that need a bunch of work. I'm just talking to my own experience. This thing came almost perfectly set up. They also play up and down the neck with no buzzing or fretting out, so very similar setups. One thing to note is, so the Westcreek comes with the binding, so you don't need to worry about fret sprout on the lower end. However, the Gibson has no fret sprout at all, which is nice. Another feature on the Westcreek is the fret ends are rounded. So this one has very nice fretwork. They both do, but this one has an additional feature of having the rounded over frets. So this just takes a little bit of extra work from someone in the factory to do that. And the Les Paul Jr. does not have that. All right, so I think I've went through all the specs of both guitars. We've got all the measurements. They're very similar. Let's go ahead and plug them in and see how they sound. All right, so for the sound demo, I'm going to be using this 1957 Silvertone 1391. It's a combo amp. It's 5 watts. It's got an 8-inch speaker, and it's all original. I'm using this amp because it's super clean, so you can really hear the individual characteristics of each guitar. And I'm just using a simple little overdrive pedal. When I go to the overdrive portion of the test, I'm not going to be using any of the gain on this pedal. I'm just going to be using the volume to push the amp into natural distortion. So, alright, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to be running both guitars to the exact same settings on the amp with the exact same settings on the pedal. The only difference is going to be the guitars is going to be switched. And I'm going to play them one right after the other so you can hear exactly how they sound back to back. Everything on the guitar is the same setup, same strings, same distance, the pickup away from the strings. So the only difference is going to be the guitars. I also wanted to show the difference the pedal is going to make. So I'm just using the volume on this pedal to boost the signal to get natural overdrive in the amp. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So this is the normal signal from my guitar. And here it is with the pedal on. No difference, and then when I go to overdrive mode, I'm just going to turn up the volume. So yeah, there you go. Alright, I'm going to start off with the Gibson, and we're going to go play some riffs and just go back and forth, first clean and then dirty. Alright, both sound great clean to my ear. Let's go ahead and try with a little bit of dirt. All right, so what did you think? So for me, both guitars played very similarly, well, mostly because I have them set up the same. So they both have the same amount of relief in the neck. The action's set the same for both. The differences would be, you know, come down to the neck shape. And just the finish on the back of the neck too. So the satin was a little nicer for that one. But both of these guitars played very similarly. And the biggest difference just came down to the electronics and the pickups. And even so, I thought they sounded both very similar. And they both sounded really, really good. And so the point of this video is not to say that, you know, a Les Paul Jr. isn't worth $2,000 and you can get something just as good for $200, because there's a lot of reasons for the price difference. This is a USA-made instrument that holds its value very well. It may even appreciate. It's made of premium materials. It's got the Gibson name, which comes with, you know, a guarantee and quality to some extent, and, you know, years of reputation, where this is just kind of a new guy on the street that you know nothing about, trying to make a name for itself. So there's a lot of reasons for the difference in price. But what I'm just trying to say in this video is that if you don't have a lot of money and you want a professional level instrument, it's a lot easier to find that these days. You can get something like this, spend $200. I bought this from Amazon on a sale for $200, and it came to me like this. It just required a very simple setup. I didn't have to replace any parts. The pickup stock, everything on this is stock. And you know, it kept up really well with the real deal. So yeah, it doesn't really matter what you're playing, because you can really find some nice budget options these days. Like this is a stage-worthy guitar. It plays and sounds great. There's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It looks good too, and you know, you could easily play this on stage. There's nothing stopping you from that. I like both guitars. I really like my Les Paul Jr. I love the color, I love the feel, and they're both great guitars. This one I could probably sell for what I paid for it. This one I'm going to take a hit, probably sell it for like $150. But for $150, this is one heck of an instrument. It's got a lot of things going for it, and it can keep up with the real deal. So that's just the point of this video. Well, that's going to be it for today. Thanks for tuning in to Beckler Guitars and Repair, and I'll have more for you really soon.